Picture yourself walking through the heavy wooden doors of a quiet historic sanitarium nestled in the peaceful hills of California. The moment you step inside, the air feels different. It is crisp, clean, and filled with the faint, comforting scent of pine and eucalyptus. The wooden floors creak gently beneath your feet, and the sunlight streams through large glass windows, casting a warm golden glow over the quiet hallways. Here, the pace of life slows down. You can hear the gentle rustle of leaves outside and the soothing sound of a distant water fountain. People walk softly. They speak in gentle tones. There is a profound sense of healing in this place, a sanctuary where the broken, the tired, and the anxious come to find restoration for their bodies and their minds. But then, you sit down in one of the comfortable chairs in the lobby and you reach into your pocket. You pull out your smartphone. In an instant, the peace of the sanitarium is shattered, not by a loud noise in the room, but by the silent screaming of the headlines flashing across your screen. Missiles launched in the Middle East, tensions rising between Iran and Israel, the Vatican calling for urgent global intervention, rumors of a third world war, economic markets trembling. You read these words, and even though you are sitting in a place of ultimate peace, your heart begins to race. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your stomach tightens. Have you ever wondered why, despite living in the most advanced nation on earth, with access to incredible comforts and medical care, millions of Americans over the age of 45 are suffering from chronic anxiety, high blood pressure, and sleepless nights? What if I told you that the geopolitical chaos unfolding thousands of miles away in the Middle East is directly connected to the health of your own heart and mind today? We wake up in the morning, pour our coffee, and turn on the television or open our news apps. We see the terrifying footage of conflict between Iran and Israel. We hear the political commentators shouting about red lines, nuclear capabilities, and extreme reactions. We feel a heavy burden for our children and our grandchildren, wondering what kind of world they are going to inherit. And without even realizing it, we carry this immense burden of fear throughout our day. It affects our digestion. It affects our immune system. It drains our energy. Ellen White, a woman of profound spiritual insight, wrote extensively in her beautiful book, The Ministry of Healing, about the intimate connection between the mind and the body. She explained that grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, and distrust all tend to break down the life forces and invite decay and death. But she also offered a remedy. She pointed us to a peace that surpasses all human understanding, a peace that does not depend on who is winning a war in the Middle East or what policies are being signed in Washington or Rome. Today we are going to look deeply into these alarming events. We are going to talk about Iran, Israel, and the Vatican, and the extreme reaction that is coming to our world. But we are not going to do this to cause you more fear. We are going to do this to bring you peace. Because when you understand what is happening through the lens of Bible prophecy, the news no longer has the power to terrify you. Instead of feeling like a helpless victim of global events, you will see the hand of God moving through history, and you will find a deep, unshakable sanctuary for your soul. Let us start by looking at the Middle East. For decades, the eyes of the world, and especially the eyes of many sincere Christians in America, have been fixed on the literal nation of Israel and its surrounding neighbors, like Iran. Entire books have been written, and countless sermons have been preached, claiming that the final battle of human history will be a literal military conflict involving these specific nations. People watch the news, waiting for a temple to be rebuilt or a peace treaty to be signed, believing that these political events are the ultimate fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And it is true that the situation is incredibly dangerous. The animosity between Iran and Israel is a powder keg. The threat of nuclear escalation is real. The world watches with bated breath every time a drone is launched or a harsh word is spoken by a political leader. The fear of a global energy crisis, driven by conflict in the oil-rich regions of the world, creates a constant undercurrent of economic anxiety right here at home. You feel it when you go to the gas station. You feel it when you buy groceries. The instability of the world is not just a distant news story. It is a daily reality that impacts your wallet and your peace of mind. But, my dear friend, I want to share something with you that might change your entire perspective. While the world is distracted by the smoke and the noise of military conflicts in the Middle East, A much more profound and subtle shift is happening right before our eyes. The conflict between Iran and Israel is not the final event of Bible prophecy. It is, however, a powerful catalyst. It is creating a climate of such intense fear, exhaustion, and desperation that the world is becoming primed for an extreme reaction. Think about human nature. When people are terrified, when they feel that their safety, their economy, and their very survival are on the line, they are willing to give up almost anything in exchange for peace and security. We saw this after the tragic events of September 11th. We saw this during recent global health crises. Fear is the ultimate motivator. It makes populations willing to accept drastic changes, new laws, and unprecedented loss of personal liberties, as long as a strong authority promises to keep them safe. This is where the Vatican enters the picture. While the political leaders of the world are arguing over borders and weapons, the papacy has been positioning itself as the ultimate moral voice of reason and peace. Have you noticed this? Whenever there is a major crisis, whether it is a threat of war between Iran and Israel, a global pandemic, or a climate disaster, the Vatican steps forward. They do not bring armies or nuclear weapons. They bring encyclicals. They bring calls for human fraternity. They bring appeals for a global moral reset. The Vatican understands something very profound about the human condition. They understand that a world exhausted by war, divided by politics, and sickened by stress is a world looking for a savior, and they are offering themselves as the spiritual and moral leaders who can unite a fractured globe. In recent years, we have seen the papacy issue urgent calls for world leaders to come together to solve our common problems. They speak eloquently about the need to protect our planet, which they call our common home. They speak about the need for a new economic system that cares for the poor. They speak about the necessity of a shared day of rest to heal the earth and to heal our families. On the surface, these ideas sound wonderful. They sound like the very things our stressed, overworked, and anxious American society desperately needs. Who wouldn't want a world without war? Who wouldn't want a cleaner environment? Who wouldn't want a guaranteed day of rest to spend with their children and to step away from the relentless grind of modern capitalism? But this is where the student of Bible prophecy must look closer, beyond the appealing rhetoric, and recognize the seismic shift that is taking place. The extreme reaction to the chaos caused by nations like Iran and Israel will not just be political treaties. It will be a global demand for moral and spiritual unity. The world will become so desperate for peace that they will look to a unified religious authority to enforce a new way of living. The book of Revelation warns us about a time when a global power, described as a beast coming up out of the sea, will exercise immense authority over the entire world. This power will demand worship and will seek to unite the world through a combination of religious influence and civil law. For centuries, the Protestant Reformers and the Seventh-day Adventist Church have identified this prophetic power as the Roman Catholic system, not the sincere individuals sitting in the pews, but the political and religious institution itself. The seismic shift that the true church fears is not a literal bomb dropping from the sky. The shift we must be awake to is the subtle, gradual, and eventually enforced surrender of our liberty of conscience in the name of the common good. Imagine a scenario where the conflict in the Middle East escalates to a point where global markets crash. Supply chains are broken. People are panicking. In the midst of this terrifying chaos, a voice of calm and authority rises from Rome. The Pope calls for an emergency gathering of world leaders. He suggests that the root of all our problems is our greed, our departure from God, and our relentless pursuit of wealth. He proposes a global reset, a return to family values, a healing of the earth, and to achieve this, he suggests a universal day of rest, a Sunday law. At first, it will be presented as a social benefit, a day for mental health, a day to reduce our carbon footprint, a day to pray for peace between nations like Iran and Israel. The exhausted, stressed-out masses of America and the world will embrace it. The labor unions will support it. The environmentalists will champion it. The politicians will legislate it. But prophecy tells us that what begins as a voluntary social movement will eventually become an enforced religious mandate. The extreme reaction to global chaos will be the sacrifice of individual religious freedom. Those who choose to honor the biblical seventh-day Sabbath, the day established by God at creation, will be viewed as stubborn, unpatriotic, and an obstacle to global peace. This is the seismic shift. This is the moment when the world, in its desperate attempt to save itself from self-destruction, will turn its back on the clear commandments of God and embrace the traditions of men. When you understand this, the news about Iran and Israel takes on a completely different meaning. You no longer watch the television with paralyzing fear about a nuclear war ending humanity. Instead, you watch with a calm, sober awareness. You realize that the geopolitical shaking is simply the stage being set for the final test of loyalty between the commandments of God and the decrees of a global religious power. And knowing this should bring you back to the peace of that quiet sanitarium we talked about at the beginning. God did not give us prophecy to scare us. He gave us prophecy so that when we see these things happening, we will know that He is in control. Jesus said in the Gospel of John, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Your physical and mental health depends on your ability to trust those words. If you spend your days obsessing over the political maneuvers in the Middle East, your health will fail, your blood pressure will rise, your sleep will vanish, and your joy will be stolen. You will be living in a constant state of fight or flight, which Ellen White warned is destructive to the delicate machinery of the human body. But if you choose to step back, if you choose to breathe deeply and place your trust in the God who declares the end from the beginning, your entire physiology changes. Faith is a healing agent. Trust in divine power is the greatest medicine you can ever take. When you know that the ultimate outcome of all this earthly chaos is the glorious return of Jesus Christ, you can sleep soundly at night, even when the world seems to be falling apart. You can look at the headlines about the Vatican, Israel, and Iran, and instead of feeling dread, you can feel a quiet, solemn hope. The storm is coming, yes. The seismic shift is on the horizon, but you are anchored to the Rock of Ages. We have explored the surface of this incredible prophetic picture, but there is so much more to uncover. We need to understand exactly how this global shift will affect your daily life here in America, how the push for a false peace will directly impact your family, and most importantly, how you can prepare your mind and your heart right now to stand firm and healthy in the days ahead. Let us sit down together for a moment and bring this massive global picture right into the heart of your own home. I want you to picture a typical evening in your living room. The sun is setting, casting long, quiet shadows across the floor. You are sitting in your favorite chair, perhaps with a warm cup of herbal tea in your hands, trying to unwind from a long, exhausting week. Then the front door opens and your adult son walks in. He drops his keys on the counter. His shoulders are slumped, and there are deep, dark circles under his eyes. He falls onto the sofa beside you, pulls out his phone, and lets out a heavy, trembling sigh. You look at him, this child you raised, this man you love so dearly, and your heart aches because you can see the physical toll that stress is taking on his body. You ask him gently, "What is weighing so heavy on your mind today?" He looks up at you, and the exhaustion in his voice is palpable. He says, "Dad, did you see the news today? Did you see what is happening over there? Iran is threatening retaliation, Israel is mobilizing, the European markets are crashing, and the price of oil just skyrocketed again. I went to the grocery store on the way home, and a basic bag of food cost me a fortune. I am working 50 hours a week, my blood pressure is through the roof, and I still feel like I am drowning. What kind of world are my kids going to grow up in?" It feels like everything is about to collapse. Listen closely to the pain in his voice. This is not just a political discussion. This is a health crisis. This is a spiritual crisis. Millions of families across America are having this exact conversation every single night. The fear of what is happening in the Middle East is not staying overseas. It is creeping under our doors, sitting at our dining tables, and slowly destroying our health. When your son speaks those words of despair, his body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. His digestive system shuts down. His immune system weakens. Ellen White wrote with profound wisdom that disease is sometimes produced and is often greatly aggravated by the imagination. She said that many are lifelong invalids who might be well if they only thought so, But how can our children think they are well when the world is constantly screaming that the end is near? You put your hand on your son's shoulder. You look him deep in the eyes with the calm, steady love that only a parent or grandparent can offer. And you say to him, "My dear boy, I know the world looks terrifying right now. I know the headlines are loud. But I need you to breathe. I need you to remember that the kings of this earth do not hold our future in their hands. God does." But then your son says something that makes you pause. He says, "I know, Dad, but people are desperate. I was listening to the radio on the way home, and they were talking about a new global initiative. With all the threat of war, the economic collapse, and the climate disasters, world leaders are begging for a solution. And the Vatican just released a statement. The Pope is calling for an international day of solidarity, a global pause. He is saying that the only way to heal the earth, to stop the greed that causes these wars, and to restore the mental health of humanity, is for the entire world to adopt a universal day of rest. Everyone is praising it. The politicians love it. The environmentalists are cheering for it. Even my boss said it might be the only way to save our economy from burning out. A chill runs down your spine, not of fear, but of profound, solemn recognition. This is the extreme reaction. This is the seismic shift. You see, the drama of the last days is not going to look like a Hollywood movie with monsters and obvious villains. The greatest deception in human history is going to look like a beautiful, desperately needed rescue mission. Imagine the emotional weight of this moment. The world is bleeding. Families are terrified of a nuclear fallout between Iran and Israel. Mothers are weeping because they cannot afford to feed their children due to war-driven inflation. Fathers are dropping dead of heart attacks because the stress of modern American life is simply too much to bear. Into this ocean of human suffering, a voice of apparent deep compassion speaks from Rome. The papacy does not come with a sword. It comes with a smile. It offers a solution that sounds so incredibly good, so moral, and so healing. A Sunday law will not be introduced as a tyrannical decree to persecute minorities. It will be introduced as a public health measure. It will be packaged as an economic necessity. It will be celebrated as the ultimate act of world peace and human fraternity. You look at your son, who is so tired, so worn out by the demands of life, and you realize how incredibly seductive this counterfeit rest will be to a weary world. Who wouldn't want a mandated day off? Who wouldn't want the factories to close, the stock market to pause, and the constant barrage of stressful news to be silenced for 24 hours? But you know the truth. You know the prophecies of Revelation. You know the history of the great controversy. You speak softly to your son, choosing your words with incredible care. You say, "I understand why that sounds so appealing. You are exhausted, and the world is exhausted. But we must remember that true peace and true rest can never come from a political decree or a religious compromise. God already gave us a day of rest. He gave us the seventh-day Sabbath at the very beginning of the world, long before there were wars, or borders, or stress. He gave it to us as a sanctuary in time, a weekly reminder that we belong to Him, and that He is our Creator and our Provider." Your son looks confused. He says, "But what does it matter which day we rest, as long as the world comes together and stops fighting? If the Pope and the politicians can use Sunday to unite the nations, to calm down the Middle East, and to give working people a break, isn't that a good thing? Why would anyone oppose world peace?" And right there, my friend, is the heart-wrenching drama of the coming crisis. The pressure to conform will not just come from the government, it will come from our friends, our neighbors, and perhaps even our own family members. When the extreme reaction takes hold, those who choose to stand faithful to the Bible Sabbath will not be seen as religious heroes. They will be seen as the enemies of peace. Imagine the dialogue in the public square. The news anchors will say, "We finally have a solution to the global crisis. We finally have a way to unite humanity." But there is a small, stubborn group of people who refuse to cooperate. They insist on keeping their own day. They are disrupting the global unity. They are the reason we cannot achieve full peace. The emotional manipulation will be overwhelming. You will be accused of being selfish. You will be told that your insistence on keeping the seventh-day Sabbath is putting the health and security of the entire nation at risk. How will you stand in that day? How will you keep your heart calm and your mind clear when the whole world, driven by the terror of wars in the Middle East and economic ruin, turns against you. Ellen White tells us that the only way to survive this coming storm is to have a mind fortified with the truths of the Bible. But it is more than just intellectual knowledge. It is a deep, abiding, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. It is a health of mind and body that can only come from trusting Him completely. If you are currently letting the news about Iran, Israel, and the Vatican destroy your peace today, you will not have the strength to stand tomorrow. If your nervous system is already shattered by the anxieties of this life, how will you endure the pressure of a world demanding your compliance? This is why the message of health and the message of prophecy are inseparable. God wants to heal your body and calm your mind right now, today, so that you can be a pillar of strength for your family when the seismic shift occurs. Think about the profound peace of Jesus. When He was sleeping in the boat during a violent storm on the Sea of Galilee, the disciples were terrified. They thought they were going to drown. They were looking at the wind and the waves, just like we look at the missiles and the political threats today. They woke Jesus up and cried, "Master, do you not care that we are perishing?" Jesus did not panic. He did not check the latest geopolitical updates. He simply stood up, looked at the raging storm and said, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. That is the same Jesus who is inviting you to rest in Him today. The Vatican may offer a counterfeit peace through a false day of rest. The political leaders may try to negotiate temporary truces in the Middle East, but these are just bandages on a dying world. True healing comes when you look at your exhausted son or your worried spouse, and you can say with absolute conviction, "Let the nations rage, let the economies shake. We are safe. We are hidden in the hollow of God's hand. We will honor His commandments. We will keep His true Sabbath, and we will not be moved by fear." This deep emotional and spiritual grounding is the only antidote to the coming deception. But to reach that level of unshakable faith, we have to take practical steps today. We have to change the way we live, the way we consume information, and the way we prepare our homes for the final events of Earth's history. You look at your son sitting there on the sofa, his face buried in his hands, completely overwhelmed by the crushing weight of the world. The news of Iran, Israel, and the failing economy has drained the very life from his features. And as you sit beside him in the quiet of your living room, you realize that the greatest battle of the last days is not going to be fought with literal missiles in the Middle East. The greatest battle is being fought right now, tonight, in the minds and hearts of the people you love most. You reach out and gently take his hands away from his face. You speak to him with a voice that is steady, anchored in decades of walking with God. You say to him, "My son, I know the darkness seems impenetrable right now. I know the politicians are shouting, and the religious leaders in Rome are offering a solution that sounds like salvation. But I want to tell you a secret about how we are going to get through this, and it has nothing to do with hiding in a bunker or hoarding supplies. It has everything to do with how we live, how we think, and who we worship. To stand firm when the seismic shift happens, when the extreme reaction of a Sunday law is enforced upon a terrified world, you cannot wait until the crisis hits to prepare. The preparation must happen today. It must happen in the quiet moments of your daily life. Think about what Ellen White wrote in the Ministry of Healing. She revealed that the condition of the mind affects the health of the physical system. If the mind is free and happy from a consciousness of right doing and a sense of satisfaction in causing happiness to others, it creates a cheerfulness that will react upon the whole system, causing a freer circulation of the blood and a toning up of the entire body. But what is the world doing right now? The world is glued to a glowing screen, watching the destruction of the Middle East on a 24-hour loop. The world is injecting a daily dose of terror, anxiety, and anger directly into its nervous system. When people live in a constant state of fear about nuclear war, inflation, and global collapse, their frontal lobes, the very part of the brain where we communicate with God, become compromised. Their judgment becomes clouded. They lose the ability to think critically and spiritually. And that is exactly what the enemy wants. A population that is physically sick, mentally exhausted, and spiritually empty is a population that will blindly accept any mandate, any law, and any false day of rest if it comes with the promise of safety. You explain this to your son. You tell him, "We must guard our minds. We must turn off the television. We must put down the smartphones. We need to step outside into the fresh air, look up at the sky, and remember that the God who created the universe is the same God who numbers the hairs on our heads. We need to drink pure water, eat simple and nourishing food, and sleep soundly, trusting that God is watching over the city. These are not just quaint health tips for older Americans. These are divine strategies for end-time survival. If your body is broken down by stress and poor habits, your mind will not have the clarity to discern the sophisticated deceptions of the Vatican when they present their counterfeit peace. Your son looks at you, and for the first time all evening the tension in his jaw begins to relax. He takes a deep breath. He asks, "So what do we do when the decree actually comes? What do we do when the world unites, when the extreme reaction takes over, and we are told we can no longer buy or sell unless we compromise our faith and accept this new global day of rest?" This is the climax of human history. This is the moment the Church has anticipated and feared. But I want you to picture this moment not with terror, but with a profound, majestic calm. Imagine the day the global decree is finally passed. The news anchors are weeping tears of joy, proclaiming that humanity has finally come together. The leaders of Iran and Israel, exhausted by war, have agreed to the Vatican's terms. The financial markets stabilize. The world celebrates what they believe is the dawn of a new millennium of peace. The bells of Rome ring out, echoing across the nations. But in your home it is a Friday afternoon. The sun is beginning to sink low in the sky, casting that same warm golden light across your living room floor. You are not watching the news. You are not looking at the global celebrations. You are in your kitchen finishing the preparation of a simple, beautiful meal. The house is clean. The atmosphere is quiet. Your son walks in, perhaps carrying his own children, your precious grandchildren. They are smiling. The heavy burdens of the world have been left outside the door. As the sun dips below the horizon, you gather your family in the living room. You open the pages of your worn, beloved Bible. You read the words of Genesis, how God created the heavens and the earth, and how he rested on the seventh day, blessing it and making it holy. You read the words of Exodus, the eternal commandment to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Outside your windows, the world is enforcing a counterfeit rest based on human authority, fear, and political compromise. But inside your home, there is a true sanctuary. You bow your heads together and you pray. You thank God for his protection. You thank him for the courage to stand for truth, even when the entire globe has chosen a different path. In that moment, you will realize that the extreme reaction of the world has no power over you. The threats, the economic sanctions, the anger of society, they will wash over you like waves crashing against a solid rock. You will be anchored. Your mind will be clear. Your heart will be at peace. This is the beautiful truth about the great controversy. God does not abandon his children in the final hour. He gives them a peace that the world cannot give, and that the world cannot take away. The Sabbath becomes more than just a day of the week. It becomes the visible seal of your loyalty to the Creator. It becomes a fortress of time where the chaos of Iran, Israel, the Vatican, and the failing American economy simply cannot reach you. Let us go back in our minds to that quiet historic sanitarium in the hills of California where we began our journey today. Remember the crisp air, the wooden floors, the gentle rustle of the leaves, and the profound sense of healing. You do not need to travel to a physical building to find that healing. God wants to turn your own mind, your own heart, and your own home into a sanitarium for your soul today. When you wake up tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before you check the headlines to see what disaster has happened overnight in the Middle East, I want you to pause. I want you to take a deep, slow breath of the life-giving air God has provided for you. I want you to open your Bible and fill your mind with the promises of Jesus. If you are struggling with high blood pressure, chronic anxiety, or sleepless nights because of the state of the world, I lovingly urge you to claim the ultimate remedy. Surrender your fears to the great physician. Let go of the illusion that you can control the geopolitical events of this earth. You cannot control what the papacy does. You cannot control what the nations do, but you can control who sits on the throne of your heart. The seismic shift is coming. The world will soon demand your worship through a false day of rest. The pressure will be immense. But you do not have to be afraid. You can look at your children and your grandchildren with absolute confidence. You can teach them the beautiful truths of God's Word. You can show them, by the quiet, healthy, and trusting way you live your life, that there is nothing to fear for the future, except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us and His teaching in our past history. The storm will break, the winds of human strife will be let loose. But beyond the dark clouds of this earthly conflict, a glorious light is about to break forth. The final answer to the chaos of the Middle East, the final answer to the deceptions of Rome, and the final answer to the pain in your own body is not a political treaty. It is the literal, visible, and majestic return of Jesus Christ in the clouds of heaven. He is coming to wipe away every tear from your eyes. He is coming to put an end to sickness, to sorrow, and to death. He is coming to take you to a place where the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. Until that glorious morning dawns, hold fast to your faith. Keep the true Sabbath. Guard your health. Love your family. And let the profound, unshakable peace of God rule in your heart today, tomorrow, and forever.